everyone. Thank you for joining us on Zoom, or if you're watching the live stream, that's amazing as well. Thank you for coming to the session today. My name is Petya, and I'll be helping today facilitate the session. So hopefully we'll get a lot of questions from you, and I'll be supporting the facilitation. So the session today is on, as you all know, here is on Field Mapping is the Future, a tasking manager workflow for Open Data Kit. So I'm sure you're all here to learn more about this idea. And this is, again, collaboration between different teams in HOTS. And you'll hear a lot from Ivan, I think, starting on that from community team, field programs, tech team, and collaborating with OMDTZ and others. So it's really a collective community, I would say, effort going forward. So that's why also having this Skillshare and sharing a lot with you, but also hearing back on your feedback. So a few house rules and reminders. As I mentioned, the webinar is live streamed on YouTube, which is amazing. So others can also watch it afterwards. And a few other reminders about code of conduct, just being welcoming, being respectful of others. It's amazing already to see from how many different places we're all joining today. We all probably speak different languages, but yeah, be careful in like the way you phrase, ask questions. And I would say the main thing, it's a really safe space. There are no stupid questions. Please feel free to ask or comment on this. So just a very brief reminder on this at the very start. And again, feel free to use the chat. We'll have time for questions as well. So it's an hour and a half, the session for today. So this is the program and what we plan on doing. We already started with some introductions, but we'll do a very brief as well icebreaker. And then you'll hear a lot from Ivan. You'll get a walkthrough of what we're all here about and hearing about the tasking manager workflow with Open Data Kit. Have some time for questions. So we have an hour and a half for the session. So plenty of time, I think, for the walkthrough, for questions. And if you're on social media, feel free to tweet or use Facebook, LinkedIn, all the different platforms, and use the hashtags you can see on the screen. Thank you again so much for joining. It's amazing to see so many people today. And here it's a lot of us, so I don't think we'll be able to go around and for everyone to speak, but we wanted to, just what we call an icebreaker, but hear from you. I know some of you already mentioned where they're joining us from. We've added 2 more questions, which will be interesting for today. So if you're happy to add your name, where you're based, where you're joining us from today in the chat again. You can add your favorite drink so we can get a sense. I, for instance, drink a lot of coffee, so I've had quite a few already today. And whether you have used Open Data Kit before. So feel free to, add that in the chat so you can meet others from the group joining us today by adding your name, where you're based, if you want, adding your drink, yes, water, there we go, and whether you've used ODK before. Welcome to, I know a few more people are just joining us, so welcome again. Thank you for joining us. We're just going through some introductions and getting people's names, where you're joining us, and whether you're using ODK, you have used ODK or not. And it's really good to see already, I think, people who have used it or not. So I think the session is for everyone to learn. Welcome again. I can see a lot of coffee, coffee lovers. I'll definitely join that group. Welcome again. Feel free to add, amazing, Sri Lanka, Finland. Okay, next time I think we really will do maybe a map and people add virtually so we can see. Great. So hopefully you've seen, you've met a few new people, Philippines, Uganda. Oh, amazing. Lovely to see. Great. And I'm sure maybe on the live stream we have even more joiners. Great. Hi, everyone. So I would say keep adding, but it's yeah, we just wanted to welcome you all, and you can meet others. But I think now maybe we can jump into the exciting bits of the session. Welcome again. And I'll introduce, I feel like Ivan maybe doesn't need a big introduction, but he's our senior humanitarian advisor at Hotspot. He's been involved for many, many years in the humanitarian open mapping world. So I'll hand over to you, Ivan, to start with the introduction. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Over to you.
Okay, marvelous. Wonderful to see you all. Thank you for coming. First of all, a bit of house rules. I love interruptions, so please feel free to speak out. If you have a question, or if you have an idea, or if you want to say something, raise your hand, wave into the camera, or even if there's a gap in the conversation, feel free to unmute yourself and just speak up. It's not going to throw me. I really like this to be a conversation rather than a monologue. And I am going to ask questions, so I'm actually expecting people to hopefully sort of speak as well. So yeah, please don't be shy. This is kind of an informal walkthrough, and I want people to really get it, and be here with me as if we were all in one room together. Okay, so without further ado, there are lots of ways to get data on the map. And the title of this seminar is Field Mapping is the Future. That's the title of this whole series here. So the idea is that HOT and the whole OSM project has long been known for its remote mapping. But field mapping is becoming increasingly important. And at a certain moment, there's only so much more tracing you can do. There are only so many roads and buildings and features that you can actually get from satellite imagery. So there's more. Now, the question has been out there if people have used ODK before, and I think it's also important to recognize that ODK is a whole ecosystem. If you've used COBOL Toolbox, you have used ODK. COBOL Toolbox is actually what's called a fork of ODK, meaning it's actually the same mobile software with a slightly different backend server. But if you've used COBOL Toolbox, you've used Open Data Kit. Open Data Kit is really, in my view, kind of this amazing colossus of an open source project that has really done a great job of solving the problem of collecting data on mobile devices in resource constrained areas where you maybe don't have expensive equipment and you don't necessarily always have the internet. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not necessarily all that geographical in its natural nature. So when the tech team has very recently gone through a marvelous exercise looking at all the different tools that we have to map, and talking to users about what they use, what they need, and it's really interesting to see the range of things. But I think you can roughly categorize mapping and data collection apps into three buckets. There's the sort of very OSM bucket, which is things like maps like Vespucci, Everydoor, really apps that are made to add data to OpenStreetMap. And generally the way they function then is they emphasize OpenStreetMap type data. So usually, we call tags. So, for the most part, if you're using something like Vespucci, you're not adding random data, you're adding OSM tags. Now, the second bucket of applications, I would say, is your navigation apps, of which there's the mighty Osmand, which is in some way sort of like an open source, open data version of like Google Maps. And then there's the old Maps.me that is morphed into something called Organic Maps, which is similar, great app, very sort of simple, just for navigation. And they actually still allow you to add things to the map. But one moment, girls, can you turn the TV down a little bit, please? That's quite loud. And so these navigation apps, they usually allow you to add a little bit of data to the map, but they're fundamentally built to navigate, not to add data. Now, the Open Data Kit collection family of apps very much started out with the idea of forms. You create a form, and it's what I call typed data, in the sense that it's not just free text. Now, anybody who's dealt with OSM data will know many, many different ways to spell highway, for example. If you're downloading OSM data, you will find that there are highways and higways and hichways and hickmans. So spelling, for example, is an issue. Whereas with Open Data Kit and that sort of app, you would actually have a drop down. So one type of data would be, a selection from a list, which is never going to be misspelled. Another type of data would be numbers. And specifically, those might be decimal numbers. They might be integers, so just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no decimal points. They might be things like phone numbers that aren't actually numbers, they're actually text strings, but you still enter them on a number pad. You might have types of data that are, for example, photographs or little videos or little audio clips. You might have types of data that are ranges, like with a little slider to go, smaller or bigger. That's what I mean by typed data. So, the ODK project, which is very much distinct from the OSM ecosystem, but has become important for open mapping, is a general data collection app that wasn't particularly geographical. Now, some years ago, the American Red Cross, along with people from the hot tech team, built an application called Open Map Kit. And so this is the first point that I'm going to stop, because there's already been a question out. People have put in the chat whether or not they've used Open Data Kit before. What I'm really interested in hearing, because I think a lot of the people who used Open Map Kit before will be quite interested in what we're talking about today. Who here has used Open Map Kit? And how do you feel about the fact that Open Map Kit is no longer available? So I'm going to stop here for a moment. And again, as I said, I'm encouraging people to speak. So I want somebody who's used Open Map Kit and kind of wishes it was still around to raise their hand or just unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about that. Over to you.
Or you can also type in the chat if you don't feel like speaking out.
David here. I've used Open Map Kit in the past, and if you're mapping buildings, really, there wasn't any other alternative. There wasn't any other way of doing that, and that app going out of functionality meant either going back to the manual process or just writing on paper, and then you really come back and add those attributes to the building when you're on your computer. So that's how it feels, and seeing those functionalities coming into ODK is, I think, an amazing step forward.
Thank you, David. Okay, so yeah, what did Open Map Kit do for us? Well, Open Data Kit, I'm going to reiterate, this is just a towering colossus of a project, one of the most important open source projects in the world, and really important for our sector. What does it do? It solves the problem of collecting typed data, but it wasn't particularly geographical. So one of the things that we very often want to do in the OSM world and the open mapping world is we want to go to something, a building, an amenity, a place. We want to select that place and we want to add some data to it. And that was the problem that Open Map Kit solved. That's, they built this fork of Open Data Kit that allowed us to go to a building and click on the polygon of a building and add some data to it. When you clicked on the polygon of that building, it would actually already show you a bit of the data that had already been there. So if you get to a building that's already got the name and the opening hours entered, rather than entering these things from scratch, you're actually either correcting or leaving them. Open Data Kit had some real limitations, but many of us miss it. So I know that David is the first to say this filled a really important gap in our ecosystem that wasn't, that was still needed. Now, fortunately, Open Data Kit has actually begun to implement a lot of that themselves. So there are some differences in the way that Open Map Kit solved the problem, the way the Open Data Kit solved the problem, but those actually lead to something very, very interesting. And I think the way that I'm going to discuss that, just keep, hold that thought, because I'm going to discuss it by showing you what's going on here. So I'm going to share my screen. So if somebody could just confirm in the chat or verbally if you can see my screen.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so here is ODK Central. So this is the you know the backend server for ODK. Any of you who've used ODK, you've probably looked at something like this. If you're using Kobo Toolbox, which is a copy of ODK, it's the same mobile app, but it's a slightly different backend server. You'll have the general idea. And one of the things in Central, which is ODK Central, which is a relatively new development, is this concept of app users. And when I first did, back in July, the workshop for using ODK, there's this concept where you have different forms, and then you have different app users, and you select app users to actually be able to access certain forms. And at first I thought, well, that's a hassle. I want everybody to be able to access every form. And when I did this ODK training back in July, I realized, well, geez, I have to create, for every single form I've created for somebody that's got, a specific task to do, I have to also create this app user and then give them access to the form. And at first I thought this is a real disadvantage compared to OpenMapKit. And then a ton of bricks came out of a window in the sky and hit me on the head. And I realized, wait a minute, this is actually an incredible opportunity, because there's another thing that HOT has always sort of done as a contribution to the whole open mapping ecosystem, which is a tasking manager. In a sense, this functionality of giving specific people specific access to specific forms more or less makes like a tasking manager. So look over here on the right. Now imagine that you're in Dar es Salaam and you want to map Mikocheni. And now you want to, I'm just going to pull over to QGIS map where you can see a little more detail of that. Let's say you've split the area that you want to map into various little areas that have a specific numbers of buildings in them. So, here, for example, are the buildings. Now, imagine that you want someone to go map, this square number 229. Or if we're back in Dar es Salaam, this area of Mikocheni, where the most important part of all of Dar es Salaam is. Well, you can get this QR code, and this QR code, if you load it into your Open Data Kit, I'm going to show you what that does. So I'm going to screen share from my phone. Now just imagine, just a moment here. Start now. Can someone confirm that my phone screen is visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I mentioned that this is the most important part of Dar es Salaam because this is where Open Map Development Tanzania is. So here you can see that the little square that I've got on my phone corresponds to the square that I clicked on that map. That QR code I used to configure my Open Data Kit. And now, so for those of you who are fans of OpenMapKit, now's your chance to bask in the glory here. I click on Open Map Development Tanzania. Oh, look at that. I can see what it is. I've got the OSM ID of it. I know that it's made of cement blocks. I know that it's house number 15. I'm scrolling through this. It's postcode 32116 Kijitonyama. The website of it is omdtz.org.tz. Again, take note of that. This is a very important organization. This is my great friends. And by the way, OMDTZ was instrumental in helping to build a bunch of the stuff that you're looking at today. But there we go. If I go in here and I select that place, oops, when I click that button, I brought you to southern Japan. Let me just head quickly back across several continents. Luckily, I can travel quite quickly on my map. And let's choose an area. So I'll choose Open Map Development Tanzania, which doesn't so much need mapping. I select it. Boom, selected building. Fantastic. What's the name of it? Well, OMDTZ. That's not going to be particularly necessary. Now, for those of you that haven't used Open Data Kit, we're going to get a little deeper into this idea of typed data in the sense that this is a building. Okay, fine. Now the next question is, what type of building is it? If it wasn't a building, if I'd selected amenity, this next question would be, what type of amenity is it? But since it's a building, let's carry on. And now I've got an obviously very small list of options here. I've got apartments, commercial, and residential. Okay, well, maybe it's one of those things. And this is what's called a radio button, in the sense that it's like, well, probably none of you remember this because it's quite old, but in the old days, you'd have radios where if you push one button, it unpushes all the other ones. So if I choose apartments, then I'll get to the next question. How many floors is it? But if I choose other, then because this is Open Data Kit, the way we've crafted this building mapping form, you can actually now hear all the other keys for a building equals in the entire OSM wiki. So this particular Open Data Kit form, which we've just made in Excel, but it's got a lot of feedback from a lot of communities. This is basically using all of the potential building equals keys in the OSM wiki. Could be military, could be a kiosk, could be a houseboat, could be a hut. Let's just say it's a houseboat. I don't think there are many of those in DAR, but moving on. Now, how many floors are there in this building? Well, here's another beautiful little thing that Open Data Kit implements. You see that little slider? Just a moment, can I ask someone to confirm that you can see this? Is everyone seeing my phone screen well?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Good. So I move this slider back and forth. And if it's a 2-story building, okay, then I can just move on. That's pretty easy. But let's say it's more than 20 stories. Oh, well, gee, so let's go to the next one. Now it says you set the number of floors to 20, which probably means there are more than 20 floors. How many are there? Well, let's say I think there's 163 floors. Now, Open Data Kit allows me to be really, what's that? Oh, okay. So Open Data Kit allows me to be very reactive in the way I design the form. So if I put that there are 163 floors, you will find something that you won't see for any other number. Congratulations, you're mapping the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. If I had put any other number there, 162, it would just move on. But I can embed useful reactions in this. So for example, if I was asking for the number of floors of a building, I can set it in such a way that if you try to enter a number that's taller than the largest building in the world, I'm going to remind you that that's probably not the case. So let's say it is the Burj Khalifa. That would be a fun building to map. Moving on right now. Now notice that this is squares, not circles. So this is not a radio button. So this building could be made out of cement and steel. And if I move on, I get to the next question. But if I click other, then I'm asked what else? Well, so it's also made from egg cartons. Okay. So now all 3 of those things are going to be in the data. This is not really something you can do with an OSM tag editor type mapping application. That would be really hard. You'd kind of have to do a lot of typing. It's not really feasible to do all this, sort of reactive logic. Okay, now I've pre-filled out that we think the average building is probably going to be open Monday through Friday, but I can always click or unclick that. Let's say it's closed every Monday, but it's open on Saturdays. Next question now, because I did it that way, when it asks me about the opening hours, it only gives me Tuesday through Saturday. If I had clicked these otherwise, then it would give me different ones. Again, it's all this reactive logic.
Cellphone ni Mami, sira kasi, sira, wait lang. Ayan na.
And let's say on Thursdays, it's not open from 9 to 5. I put that as the default. It's open from 9 o'clock to 9 p.m. So 2100 hours. This format, by the way, of hours, this is the same way that the data lives in the back end of OpenStreetMap. So while this isn't specifically an OpenStreetMap application, it's very possible to craft a form in such a way that it really fits with an OpenStreetMap data model. And phone numbers. So I mentioned earlier you can have numbers. Well, I can have numbers as a range like we had earlier for the number of floors where I'm actually moving a slider. Or in this case, I have something where I can also have other kinds of symbols. So I can do a phone number. So I can do 555-1357 and then a space. So yeah, there's all this flexibility. This is technically not even a number, it's actually just a text string. But because of the way I've configured the question in Open Data Kit, it gives me a number pad instead of a keypad, which is pretty helpful. Now, this is the next thing is this concept of repeats. Are there more or alternate phone numbers? If I say yes, then it asks me, okay, if there are more than more phone numbers, please specify who the first number reaches. Well, the first number is reception. And another phone number, which is 555, 1, 2, 3, 8. And that reaches, the mapping department. Okay. And now I can add an arbitrary number of phone numbers. In this case, I'm going to say do not add. There's only the reception in the mapping department. Add the email address. Add the website URL. Well, in this case, I will give you my my actual Twitter handle. So there you go. Take a good look. If anybody would like to see lots of criticism of the United Nations, this is where you want to go. Also, lots of open map stuff and promotion of free software and various rants. So yeah, in this website or URL, you can easily configure that to have specific questions about social media or whatever. And of course, I can take a picture. A picture is perfectly valid data. It can be awfully helpful for people trying to validate data quality. I don't know. Here's a picture. And moving on. No other comments. Save form and exit. Now that's going to be pushed up to this server. So again, this idea then is that I've clicked on a QR code in the map, and it's configured my Open Data Kit in such a way that I've actually got that very specific area. Now, let's go again here within Dar es Salaam. If I want to work in another area, I'm gonna scan this QR code. Boom. Now when I go fill blank form, refresh it. Oh, that's a different area. If I go select place, once again, my GPS drags me back to Japan. But when I zoom in here, okay, I am not at OMDTZ anymore. Now I'm near the beach. So look at that. Just as the hot tasking manager allows us when we're remote mapping to coordinate that everyone's working in their own specific place, the way ODK has created this app user format allows us to give people specific tasks in specific places. And now just to show off a little bit, I'm going to drop this one and I'm going to head over to Dakar. So I'm going to, again, add a project here. Now, I've got my map of Dakar, Senegal. So here we are in the westernmost point of continental Africa. And I go in here where I've actually done a better job of dividing up this city into sort of sensible, based on the streets. So I click in here, I get a QR code. Whoops, I've switched to Dakar. Fill blank form, Dakar Sud, select place. Again, quickly move away from Japan. Now I'm on the west bit of Africa. And now I have one little chunk of Dakar that I can map. And here I have a building that probably has some data on it. So I can select that. And sure enough, I've got the OSM ID and I can already peruse the data that has already been added to this particular building. I'm gonna leave that there for now and switch back to my computer. So just let go of this screen share here. And let's come back over here. So all that being said, now I want to throw it over to all of you on the call. Oops.
We had some actually questions, Ivan, and comments in the chat so that we can maybe read through, or people can also speak. There was one actually earlier on that maybe I'll read through and you can address, which was when we already asked the question about Open Map Kit. And I think two people were asking, like, they weren't aware it's no longer available, like, and there was a question on why that's the case, if we have more background on this, and then a few others, but that was the first one a bit earlier on.
Okay, got it. Now, first off, I have just looked at the chat and I see that we are in the presence of open source royalty here, because I see Yao Anakwa on the call, and Yao is a wonderful person, and he is the head of Nafundi, which is the core developers of Open Data Kit. Yeah, I had no idea you were here. Would you like to say hello? I would love for our team to bask in the presence of open source greatness here. Okay, he's not in his office yet. No problem. All right. So yeah, no. So actually, this was the point. Having just finished the phone demonstration, where I actually wanted to stop and solicit some reactions here. So what I've shown you is a prototype, kind of proof of concept, of how you can take the idea that was Open Map Kit of allowing people to add specific data to specific features or buildings on the map. And we've combined that with the idea now of the tasking manager, the hot tasking manager, which we use to coordinate open mapping efforts. So my question really is, who thinks they might need or want this? And what do you think of this? So feedback, and it doesn't have to be complimentary. I would definitely like to hear from people, their unvarnished opinions. So over to you. Let's hear a bit from the crowd, and especially those of you who maybe have been looking for this kind of thing or have some ideas of what it is that they need for their mapping.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hand and just unmute yourself if you.
Yeah, just go. Once there's a queue, then you'll have to take your turn. But right now, it's open mic. Let's go.
No volunteers. I can read through some of the chat messages, and maybe some that would inspire others too. So Rupert saying it's a wonderful breakthrough. It's going to change the parameters. No questions. And so there are a few other questions that maybe I can read through, Ivan, unless we give more time for people who are brave enough to speak out.
Well, what I'd like to do, if nobody's going to jump in, is I'm going to pick on someone. So David, can I get a reaction from you? Oh, wait, we have a hand up from Apollinary. David, you're off the hook.
Hello, I'm just going to jump in. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go.
Oh, hi, I'm Minhaj, and I was wondering, I actually used OpenMapKit quite a lot, and back then we had to use MB tiles and then put it into the OMK, and it was a long process. And it's really good to see that ODK has finally, integrated the open mapping into their app. I was wondering where I can find the full workflow process from, for example, taking an area, then dividing it up into sections. Like I'm looking for the whole workflow process, and if you can point to me where I can get that, something like that. Thank you.
So I'll respond to that one quickly, just to emphasize, this is a prototype. This is an idea in the head of myself, my colleagues at OMDTZ, the tech team at HOT. This is absolutely not something that is ready for anybody else to use. If you're interested in using it as a beta tester, then the thing to do is email me. So Ivan Gayton at hotosm.org. I'll just enter that. Is your first point of contact. So this is probably as good a time as any to really reveal what the primary purpose of this Skillshare is. I mean, it's great to sort of show people what's possible with ODK, and you can do a lot of this stuff, certainly the select from map functionality all by yourself. But this whole idea of tasking in the larger coordination platform, if you want it, you have to ask for it, because it's not built yet. I have hacked together a prototype. I would not expect anyone to be able to try to run that on their own. It's labor intensive and error prone, and I've hacked it together with a bunch of very unstable computer code. But here we are with the marvelous resources of HOT and a great deal of technical expertise around the table. So if as a community you want this, and furthermore, if you want to guide the way it's actually implemented, you got to say so. So the real answer is, the way to get it is to ask for it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to pay for it or you have to build it yourself. But if we as HOT, follow our mandate and our strategy and do what we're supposed to do in the world of open mapping, what we're going to do is respond to the needs of the community. And so if you like what you see here, or if you want something like what you've seen here, you have to tell us. Now, to be perfectly blunt, if you don't ask for it, me and probably Iddy from OMBTZ and a couple of my volunteer friends are probably going to keep on working on this, but not fast, and it's not going to be, particularly stable or simple for externals to use. If you want this, if the community needs this to be a widely available tool, you got to say so. Okay, other questions? Petya, what would be another question that I should answer? Oh, there's a couple of hands up here. Oh yeah,
hands, and then I'll read through some of the questions. I think.
Okay, well, actually, if I could stop for a moment, is back at his desk, and so as I had no idea, a completely unexpected treat. I'd like to ask Onakwa, the co-founder and leader of the ODK development community, to say a quick hello. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Ivan. It's great to see you and great to be on the call. My apologies for not being able to jump in right away. It's very early in the morning here in San Diego. It's just 5. I joined the call at 5 and the kids were asleep, so I had to sneak out of the house and get to the office. As everybody knows, the ODK team, we're really happy to partner with OSM and HOT OSM on all things mapping, and I'm really glad to see that the features that we built with app users, even though Ivan, you didn't love it at the beginning, I'm happy to hear that the stack of bricks fell on your head and you got this insight to use both the app users and the QR codes as a way to do tasking. So that I'm really glad to hear that. I'm also, loving that the select from map feature, which OSM and a bunch of other folks in the community, IFRC and others were able to sort of contribute to, so we could build that feature for folks. We have a number of exciting things that are coming down the map, down the road rather, in ODK, as far as geographic tools and being able to collect more data about entities. Stuff that the team's working on right now, and you will see some developments in the next few, months. I can't promise a ship date. If I promise a ship date, our CTO Ellen will get very upset. So I will just say it's coming soon. Definitely in the next few years, maybe the next decade, there's more features coming. So I just can't promise a ship date, but it's coming. So I'll mute. I'll just be an observer. If there's anything that I can help with or answer questions, I'll try to answer those questions in the chat as well, that I'm seeing. Sound good?
Thank you. Yeah, and it's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you.
Great to meet you. Yeah. Do we have more hands raised? I think Shoaib, you had your hand raised before. If you want to ask a question or comment, and
hi. Thanks, Ivan.
Yes.
And thanks, y'all as well, and Petya. Good to see you again. That's really like the idea of. So I just had a question about the points that you had there. Is the idea to go and map the points that are already there, or to add new points?
Well, it's very much, the core idea is to map points that are already there. So if you'll permit me, I'd like to actually talk just a little bit about, what I think is sort of the global philosophy of how we should be filling out the map here. So I'm going to kind of start at the beginning. In my view, if you take, for example, a city that we want to get a good map of, what's the starting point? The starting point is imagery. It's always imagery. So, since the inception of OpenStreetMap, we've depended on satellite imagery. as the world turns, we're actually using drones more and more often. And to be honest, I think we should be considering a sort of tasking manager type flow as well for collecting drone data and crowdsourcing more of that, so that we're less dependent on the big satellite companies. But whether or not that's relevant, the first step is always imagery. The second step is the remote mapping, and this is where HOT has situated itself really beautifully with the tasking manager. You have on one side, you have OSM itself, OpenStreetMap, which is this incredible open data repository for geographical data. And on the other side, you have the tools, JOSM, ID editor, and HOT didn't build either of those things. And most of the developed world, honestly, that was mapped in OpenStreetMap, it was just by people using JOSM or ID editor and throwing stuff into OpenStreetMap. But as soon as you get into HOT's priority countries, I would say the lion's share, maybe even the vast majority of the mapping that's been done is through the HOT tasking manager. The HOT tasking manager is what? It's just a way to ensure that people are coordinated in their mapping efforts, whether it's actually organized mapping where fleets of people go out and map an entire city, or whether it's just people volunteering to do little bits. They click on a square and become responsible for it, and it becomes possible for somebody to see how that's done. So to recap, you start with the imagery, you go to the remote mapping. The third step, in my view, is then the feature mapping in the field. And that's not with ODK, that's with something like Vespucci. So Vespucci, which is my favorite sort of like feature mapping app for in the field, that's more or less, I think of it as JOSM on your phone. You can actually trace a building. Somebody in the French session asked if we were, as part of this field mapping tasking manager, planning to put a, more of the sort of like polygon creation and so forth. And my real answer right now is I don't think we need to compete with the apps that do that well. There are applications that do a really good job of like, creating those polygons. So I think that's kind of the third step. And then to come back to your point, Shoaib, the fourth step is then to compile all that information so that you have your features. If you look at the way I prepared this mapping for Dakar, I actually, found a place in a part of Dakar that's pretty well remote mapped. Those are all those buildings, all those colors, and those color codes are, by the various areas that I've split them into. That was semi-automated, and you can see how those centroids actually match the base map. So if you're going to go out and do this, this sort of fifth step, that's where you're adding the real local knowledge. You start with the imagery, you do the remote mapping, you do the field polygon and line and point mapping, the sort of feature mapping in the field. You clean it all up, and that's basically this QGIS project you're looking right here, such that pretty much everything that needs to be mapped is already visible. And then you go out with Open Data Kit. And Open Data Kit is the thing that you use to actually go to a feature that's already been traced and add it in. Now, that being said, what I didn't show you in that form is that if you don't select one of the points, it offers you to take a GPS point or do a long press on your screen to leave a point there. Because you always have to be ready for the idea that something isn't going to be pre-mapped. But the real value of ODK in this workflow comes when you situate it within that larger workflow. You start with the imagery, you do the remote mapping, you do the field feature mapping, you do the cleanup and preparation. Now you're out there, efficiently and with really good quality adding this data. And then I would humbly venture to say that there's a final step, which is where we don't just publish this data. We don't just throw this into OSM. We do all our validation, our quality control and so forth. But then the heart and soul of what we should be doing is finding the people that can use that data to improve lives and help them do so. And that brings us to why we all do this. It's not because maps are cool, they are cool, but the real reason is that if we do this kind of data and we take it to people like public health practitioners, we could take it to people like pizza delivery folks, urban planners, people trying to do resilience and stopping flooding, people trying to we've got Janet Chapman on the call who works on gender issues. The thing that we really ought to be doing at the end of all this is bringing all this wonderful local field gathered data to actually improve lives. So sorry, a bit of a long answer to your question there, Shoaib. The short answer to your question is, sure, yeah, if you get to a building that's not already there, just take a GPS point and somebody can integrate that data later. Yeah, it looks like you've got a hand up. I'm not sure if that's the old hand or if that's a new hand.
That was the old hand, sorry.
I think maybe.
Okay, no problem.
Do we have other questions? I think we have, yeah.
I do want to actually throw some flowers here. So on this call, we have a number of the people who helped build the stuff that you're looking at. So Idi from Open Map Development Tanzania has been my colleague and partner in crime for 5 years now, and Idi has helped build this, along with Kristen Tonga from the Hot Tech team, along with a volunteer named Reetta Valimaki from Finland. And I believe Tim Geda is here as well. And so that's the team that has built what you're looking at right now. So, Tim, Kristen, Idi, Reetta, take a big bow. And Idi, I would like for you, if you can just give me a moment to talk about the way you and your team are planning to use this functionality in your upcoming project.
Hi everyone, and thanks Ivan. The presentation is very good, and yeah, thanks for inviting me here. So yeah, so we've been using ODK in a couple of projects, and like this came last year when we were organizing the nationwide mapping. At that moment, we just wanted to have a platform whereby we can live monitor our data. That is where we actually started using Odk Central. And by using ODK Central API, we managed to have a web map which was visualizing or presenting the data live from the server. So when people are out around Tanzania collecting different data points of milling machine, then the managers and supervisor can easily monitor all the submissions, live submission in 5 to 7 minutes after submission, and tracking the work. But also, addition to this, what Ivan is just been presenting now, we usually conducting large mapping scales, whereby we usually involving a lot of people, because in some of our projects, we are usually working with industrial training students. So at one moment, we can have up to more than 100 students, industrial training students, who we are training them on using these tools. And also they been trained on how to to do community mapping, like engaging the community. So we can find that we usually send out at once more than 100 people for data collection. So previously we had the issue of how to monitor, like individual monitor the data. So when you know that when you're having many people out for field data collection, it's hard to have individual following of the data. We can use ID from the submitted form, but still we had some challenge. So for this one, we're expecting like this one. This was one of the motives which we are expecting to use these tools on, like managing our field programs. So during industrial training, or when we're organizing the large mapping scale initiatives, we can easily monitor the work, we can easily know that the trend of work, and you can easily work with the people who are collecting data easily. So yeah, that's I will not talk much. That is just a highlight, and how I'm seeing this is useful in our future project, and how we can simply use that. So yeah, Ivan, thanks a lot. Also you, person, for your contribution in the open mapping community. So, and everyone participated, thanks. Yeah. So that's short for me.
All right, fantastic. Tim, if you're there, could you say a few words about how the web mapping works?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ivan. Can everyone hear me? Well, it's been great to work on this, and I think we are not there yet, and we'd love to continue working on this. That's all I can say. And I think, yeah, it was mentioned that we now have direct access to mock locations for external GNSS units. So that's something I'm curious to work on. Ivan and Edie. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So let's throw the question out to the crowd here. I mean, my earlier question stands. What do you think? Do you want something like this? Criticisms, suggestions, ideas, requests, feedback. This is the initial moment at which it's I mean, it's not at all a sure thing that we're going to continue building this thing. I'll probably keep using something very much like it sort of internally, but it's an open question as to whether or not this needs to be a tool that the community wants. So I really want people to sort of feedback on that, but also on, if we do pursue it, what shape you would need it to take, and what are the things that you would require for this to help you in your mapping. Question of the crowd, please speak up. If nobody does, I'll start picking on people.
I'll just add one thing from my experience, Ivan and team. So 10 years ago, I worked on the mapping in Australia for post bushfires, right? The biggest bushfires they had. And the problem that I saw there is still like unsolved, which is being solved here, which is that how do you standardize data input in a rapid deployment where you have lots of teams going out and very poor coordination between them, and trying to get as much mapping done as fast as possible. And if you can standardize, and because the rest of the time the data was coming in, then the next week was spent cleaning that data because there was no standardized spellings. There's no way to search. We were writing fuzzy string matchers to try and search through data because nobody had bothered to create a standard naming convention. So, that problem is, I don't know if it still exists, but, 10 years ago that was there. And if it solves part of that, this solves part of that, I don't know. Yeah, and then the other question is how quickly can you get it out into the field and deploy it? So that installation instructions and deployment, ease of deployment is an important feature to get it into hands of people. So anything, I mean, also one other question I have is where is it on GitHub and how can I contribute if there's any issues?
I don't know if perhaps this isn't, I have an urge to share that it seems like there are two parts of what Ivan is talking about. One of them, which I don't think has been talked about very much, is like standardizing forms. Rob has been, and like the standardization of ODK forms so that that people are, there's an ODK convert program that will make some of that like ODK to OSM easier and more consistent. And then there's also the like managing of the teams, and like both of these are part of how you can automate the like full process to make it smoother from the like selecting this is a name, like this is a city I want to map, to how do I divide it up, to how do I get that data into OSM. And it seems like that standardization part is like part of the potential improvement.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that the way we've set this up, Kristen and Eddie and Tim and Rita and myself, is that you can, that building form is just one form, and the hot tech team has, led by Rob, been really working on an effort to collect and standardize everybody's ODK forms. But the way I've implemented, this, the sort of like the thing that links the form to the individual areas, it'll work with any form. So it doesn't have to be buildings. You could actually write your own form and use this tool chain with it. I mean, right now, to amplify my earlier point, this is a prototype. I can sort of hack it together manually. I've automated a bunch of stuff, but it's absolutely not ready for someone to just like read the instructions and do it by themselves. If you need that, then you need to either get in touch with me and use it as a beta user, or you need to tell, as a community, speak up and say, we want this developed properly and tell us how, and we'll get it to the point where it can be, used by externals. But yeah, I mean, the way this flow is set up, it's agnostic about the form. You can use any form. The way this program works is it takes a template form and it just modifies the part that, the title of the form, which ODK on the back end reads, and it modifies the reference to the geographical file. It just does that automated with a little Python script. This might be a good time. I know it's really early and you haven't had coffee, Rob, but maybe you could talk a little bit about those backend scripts that you've written to take the submissions and convert them into OSM XML and submit them for validation, which is also a really important. I mean, one of the most important things about the tasking manager is it really systematizes the idea that people map, but before it goes into OSM, somebody validates it. And that's something that's also been tricky for field mapping. So Rob, could you maybe speak to that for a bit if you're sufficiently caffeinated?
Yeah, now the coffee is slowly kicking in. And the other problem too is that sometimes a single ODK survey question generates multiple OpenStreetMap tags in various ways. And so depending how you answer it, you might get building equals something. Oh, actually, this is an amenity equals something, and stuff like that. So this software is actually based on a project I wrote 4 or 5 years ago for mapping wildland fires, and somebody else has been mapping fires. And part of the idea there was, once again, was to go from rapid field data collection, preferably fully offline, to something I could upload to OpenStreetMap when I got around to it and stuff like that. It's written in Python, so it should be pretty easy to understand. And there's 2 separate pieces of this, one of which is just a simple config file. It's in YAML format, and it basically says, when you see this answer for this survey question, here is how that answer turns into OpenStreetMap syntax. Now, you can actually write an X form where a lot of the tag and values in the XLS form are very, very close to OpenStreetMap. Basically, anything in the name column on the survey sheet becomes the OpenStreetMap tag, and anything in the name column on the choices sheet becomes the value and stuff like that. But when you can actually pick it specifically, or like as I said, a single question gives you multiple outputs, then the software actually can do that. Like there's a little couple things, like if you have solar power, your kids might want clothes on. So for instance, if you have solar power, that actually turns into 2 separate OpenStreetMap tags. And so anyway, that's all controlled by a simple YAML config file. I've been using this with our West Africa Hub mapping projects and stuff like that. And the other thing too is that sometimes when we're collecting data in the field, some of the data is private, not public. Like maybe we're mapping something for World Bank, and so we want to know where waste distribution points are or water points go, but we don't want to know about the income of the homeowner, for example. So what it does, my software, is it pulls out everything for OpenStreetMap into an OSM XML file, and then anything that is mostly for the people funding these organized mapping projects, they get the full data file in GeoJSON format so they can edit it with JAWS and with QGIS. Then that has all the data in it, not all of which is OSM oriented and stuff like that. And then the other part is to make this translation simpler. We're starting to build a library of common XLS forms, initially focus on humanitarian mapping. I have a few other weird forms for fires and stuff I'll eventually add. But initially, the idea is that if we have really highly designed XLS forms for easy user navigation, really good questions supporting multiple languages, rather than just forcing everybody into English, then we'll basically design forms that are not only efficient to use, letting us collect more data, higher quality, but also be really easy to convert to OpenStreetMap. Because something I've learned at Hot is we often collect a lot of data in the field, that never gets in the OpenStreetMap because of the tediousness of trying to figure out all of these tag translations in your head. You need a lot of training. You kind of have to be an expert. You have to drink lots of coffee and things like that. And so the idea was to reduce the pain of the data conversion, as well as doing some kind of data quality and validation and stuff during the process. This does work. It's a little bit less messy. It's in a public repository. Obviously, it's a work in progress, but mostly about 90% complete at this point. I'm just working on XLS form and helping out Ivan on some stuff that I hadn't put in the original program. And I think that's it with my caffeinated sense this morning.
Thank you, Rob. I'll just jump in briefly. Thank you, Ivan. Arnel just reminded me that actually we have the session, and it's so amazing that we have a lot of participation and a lot of messages in the chat that I think we need to continue engaging. But Arnel just reminded me that I think the session was initially set for an hour. So if people want to stay, Ivan is here for another half an hour, so we can continue doing that. And I know Edie and Yo have their hands raised, but I just wanted to mention if people do need to drop out, there's loads of routes in which you can follow up. You have Ivan's email, you have the GitHub repo. I think there's a Lumio thread where we can continue this, or we can continue as well in the session now. But I just wanted to make sure if there are people who need to drop out, make sure you keep in touch. And if you're free for another half an hour, keep drinking coffee or keep staying in this session. And I don't know, Arneli, you said if we want to take a photo. I'm not sure who would do that before we continue.
Well, and before people drop off, I just want to really emphasize that, again, this won't happen unless people want it. So if this is something that you need, don't just sit and wait for it. Sing out that this is something that you want or that you need.
I say this, maybe we do a smiley if people want to open their cameras just for a photo, and then I welcome you to stay if you have the time. We can continue the discussion. But yeah, Arneli is our photo taker.
Everyone ready? We have like four pages.
Four
pages of Zoom. So yeah, give me a moment. Okay, I'll take one now. 1, 2, cheese. And then yep, another one. I think this should be the last one. 1, 2, 3. Wait, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Keeping the smiles for long. I think the only other thing I was saying, it would be great if people can stay, but if anyone needs to run off, as Ivan said, the main thing is you have to ask for it. So please be in touch with all the different routes. And the only other thing I wanted to share, if people need to drop out, there's another Skillshare happening next Friday on Kobo Toolbox, which was already mentioned. And and there is a feedback form for people who need to drop out. Thank you so much. And for those who are staying, we can, who have the time, which is amazing to see, we can continue the discussion. Sorry for the interruption. So back to the exciting part of those of you who are able to stay. And I think we have 2 hands raised. So let's, I would say, continue the discussion. There's loads in the chat, and I think we'll make sure we capture that as well. But who was first? I think, let me just see. Yo, I think it was you, and then Jacobo next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak again. So I heard when Rob was talking, Rob, who's caffeinated. I'm not caffeinated. I'm just so excited to talk about mapping that I don't need caffeine right now. I heard a lot of mentions of Python, and everybody loves Python. So the Odk Central server does have a REST API that's easy for folks to access, but I'm thrilled to announce that we have also built a Python library called PyODK. I'll drop a link here in the chat below, which wraps that API client and makes it easier for folks to get their data out of ODK and put it into a Python workflow. So if you use pandas or GeoPandas, Matplotlib, you can now do that stuff more easily. I think we have 1 or 2 PRs before it's officially released, but just a sneak peek for my friends at HotOSM. And if they're, I know, sorry, Ivan, a lot of people built these low Python clients, and we feel bad that we've had to build our own, but you will like this one. It's going to be a lot faster and easier, and we've wrapped a lot of the auth stuff, and we're going to be providing a Fluent API and these kinds of things. So it'll be nicer in that end. We should have told people about it, but we decided like last month to do it. So it's coming. You can see the PRs. You can connect ODK to a Python notebook and these kinds of things, Jupyter notebook. So that's going to be really great. The second thing I wanted to mention, and if people should contribute to that library, I think right now lets you do a bunch of stuff, but if you have ideas for the library or things that we can add to it, please let us know. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, a lot of this stuff is about tasking, and tasking is something that we care deeply about at ODK. And so, again, as I said, I can't promise any timelines, but as part of the work that we're doing, bringing entity-based data collection as a first-class object to ODK, we're also going to be looking at tasking and assignment, and making that also a first-class object. So the future vision we have here is that you will be able to, if you have 10 locations and you have a team of 10, you can assign 1 to each location, and ODK will be able to help you manage that process. So that's stuff that's coming. That's a little farther out, but yeah, there's more stuff coming. But for now, don't wait for tasking. Ivan built something. Ivan, around you guys should build something. But the Python library is at least here, and it should make life a little easier going forward. So thanks so much. I'll lower my hand.
Thank you. I think we had Jacobo. You had your hand raised as well.
Okay. Good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. I'm really glad to be this evening. I mean, this afternoon or in the morning. I just want to I'm a newbie. I'm a beginner mapper in OSM, and I really enjoyed this meeting, seeing job people from Odk OSM. I want to ask. I kind of started my mapping last month in OSM, but I see that my edit are not being made on OSM and dashboard. I see that there's not really progress in the edits, but I just kind of hoping one day with me saying this in this group, and hoping one day that I'll be assisted. I'll be helping the area of mapping and the area of JS word. Hello, sir. Could everybody get in play? Ma, did you get me play? Hello.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. My issue is that that's my username on OSM. I'm finding it hard to make my change set are not really recognized as in something is still on the 00 highway map, building map, and waterways map. Why I've done some edits on it, and I really want to go into JS and especially this data quality internship. I really want to go into it. So that's my plan of building my JS career in year in Nigeria. So I don't know if you can help me. I really appreciate your help, and I would like to go into the field mapping on using remote sensing and JS.
My response, I think there are loads of sessions also with the community working group and kind of involvement in their different ways of keeping in touch and up to speed and connecting with others and training. So I think if you're not already involved in that, that's a route. But over to you, Ivan, maybe for any other reflections, or let's see if we have more specific questions from people. There was a lot in the chat, and I really like how people are responding to specific questions already. And some of the feedback, ask for a Spanish session as well. on this.
No, si necesito una sesión en español, no hay problema, pero no hablo muy bien español. Pero quiero. Oh, okay, thanks, Ya. Any last questions for Ya before he jumps? All right. Okay, I mean, I don't have much else other than to say that if people want to try this out, get a hold of me. If 2 or 3 people want to try it out, then I can just facilitate, and we can look at whether or not it makes sense for your use case right now. If 20 people want to try it out, then yeah, talk to Hot, talk to Petya and Lane, and we'll see what we can do about getting those resources. Again, I can't emphasize enough, the demand shouldn't come from me. I want this thing. This is solving a problem, scratching my own itch here. This is solving a problem that I have in projects that I work on. But I think it's important for the community to shape what we do, and Hot shouldn't be basing its strategies and its plans on what I feel like doing. So you're in the driver's seat. So please, by all means, I think Pete Masters often said, Hot should be a car that anybody can jump in and drive somewhere. So the door's open, the keys are in it. Let us know what you need. As for, I guess one more tiny reflection about this. Somebody said during the previous session that, this is really very much about organized edits. So, it's the idea, like Iddy said, where you've got 100 students going out. Well, keep in mind that a great number of people who do remote mapping just as individual volunteers actually find their way into mapping volunteering through the tasking manager. So in one sense, somebody who might not be able to just, randomly download, Osmand and start adding their favorite restaurants or getting into doing Vespucci, it's also possible for a tasking manager, for somebody to run a tasking manager instance like this, that is a portal, that is a place for people to go and get involved. Oh, look, there's a project in my city. Maybe I could grab a little square and go and map somewhere. So this needn't just be something that's for big organized institutional mapping campaigns. This also can be a concept that we can use to bring people into OSM. As we transition into this phase where a great deal of the remote mapping has been done around the world, there are very few places now that are blank in the map where you're going to do a mapathon with tasking manager and JAWSM and find, just blank areas. It's increasingly important for us to start adding that all important local data, which is of course the prelude to, I'll never stop saying this, that point where we actually have to make it mean something, where we have to help people, that we have to actually, help people turn data and mapping into better lives. I'll leave it at that.
I have one just comment. May I do, just to inspire people, I would kind of like to do a very quick demo of something that doesn't work very well and is not at all production ready. It needs a lot of work before it's but gives you an idea of what something might be. Could I do that real quick? I think it'll take less than 5 minutes.
Go, yeah.
People, yes. So hopefully,
share screen here. And I want to share just one screen, this one. Okay, can you see that screen? Yes. All right, so
yep.
This is a very, very simple Flask server. But imagine something, you register, you log in. We're gonna pretend I'm Ivan. I have some tasks
you
that I've done.
You can be me anytime you
maybe this is a task that I selected. If you see this I can create a new project. I create the title of a project. I'm outside of Lisbon right now. And there should be a drop down with form templates. ODK, we provide some form templates for buildings, for sewage. There's a grid type. We've decided some of the things that will automatically create a script that will break up an area. We decide how big a task should be. There'll be a default that makes sense. You show a map here. You show like how big an area. People get to select how big an area. They hit create a script. A script is created. Ta-da! We interact with the ODK server. This creates a project. A project might look like this is a very simple project, but like you can see a project. This is the one that Ivan did. It's currently hard coded. You can select one of these tasks. It shows the QR code right there. People can like scan it or download it. You can assign that task to me. Then it's like, if I reload this page, sorry, then like you can see which tasks haven't yet been assigned. And yeah, so something like this could be that workflow. And like right now, all of this is manually done with like QGIS, and like there's like some steps that aren't automated yet, but the idea would be to like automate this whole process. And so like you can just go to this you can just say create a project, see this map, go to this QR code and divide up tasks. So anyway, that I just thought that might be useful in case people.
No, thank you, Kristen. Any?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Kristen. We had we were kind of burning the midnight oil to get this ready for this presentation because I got COVID a couple of weeks ago and I was pretty unable to prepare properly. So thank you, Kristen, Iddy, Tim, for helping get this ready. And thanks for that wonderful demonstration, Kristen. But yeah, this is it. There's no reason for people to to have to do all this stuff manually when we're able to actually create, using the same ideas. The hard part was coming up with the idea, of the tasking manager, not our idea, but the idea of the tasking manager that was maybe one of HOT's most important contributions to the whole ecosystem in its entire existence. Once the idea is come up with, we can build this kind of thing. And again, its time has come. Kristen, I note now that Yaw has provided us with an API. So when you say it our front end interacts with the backend server, we can finally dispense with my horrible code or Rob's less horrible code. Actually use ODK, and I'm sure eventually somebody will start implementing more of this. But if we want it, it's there for the reaching out and taking.
Well, I'll just say another thank you. I think what this shows is so many people joining, so there's definitely a lot of interest. I would just encourage everyone to maybe use the Lumio thread that Pete shared as well, or keeping in touch in the virtual space. Any final notes, words from anyone before we close? But thank you so much, Ivan, for the amazing walkthrough. And I think we can see it from the reactions in the chat already, and Eddie and everyone who've collaborated. I think it shows it is a collaboration, and I think that's thank you, Pete, again for resharing the Lumio link. Thank you, everyone. See, I get some reactions, hearts, thumbs up, waves. We can do great.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.